Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please, guys, participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1.
You will hear a conversation between a student and an accommodation officer. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 3.
Well, you have left things a bit late. Have you tried looking for somewhere in Newbridge?
Newbridge? No, I haven't. I've never heard of Newbridge.
Well, let me show you. I've got a map here. Here's where everything is. You come into Newbridge over the bridge, and the main road in front of you is, surprisingly enough, the High Street. This is one of the main streets. And branching off to the left, you can see there, is West Street. That is another busy part of town.
I see.
Now, as I was saying, here is the High Street, and here is West Street going left. Now, if you go along West Street, the first place you come to on your right is the supermarket. It's not a very big one, but it's got most things you're likely to need. Next to it, there's the Old Town Hall. I say the Old Town Hall because it is about 100 years old, but it will soon make way for a car park, I'm afraid. I suppose the car is king. Now, opposite the supermarket is the railway station. You can get very frequent buses and trains from here into the university. And next to that is the sports centre. It's a brand new one and was built on the site of some tennis courts. So that's progress. It's got everything the keen sportsman like yourself might require. Now, that's the centre of town, and I want to point out to you the buildings opposite the supermarket, but on the other side of London Road. There are two buildings there. The one further away from the High Street is called the Heights, and the one nearer the High Street is called the Towers.
What are they?
They are where you could find a flat. One of them, the Heights, has a number of flats for rent at the moment.
Oh, good.
Now, the first one is flat 4. That's a nice flat with a balcony, and you need to apply to the Newbridge Accommodation Agency to ask about that one. You'll find their number in the phone book. Number 6 is another nice one which has been empty for a while, and you can ring the owner directly, I think. Yes, I've got her number written here. There it is.
Right, thank you.
Good. Now, number 8 is a re-advertisement.
What do you mean?
Well, it did have a tenant, but now it is for rent again, so I'd like to ask about that one. Leave it with me and I'll look into it for you. Then we can talk about it when I've got more information.
Okay. Are there others in this block?
Yes, there's number 10. Now, this one's a bit strange. It's advertised with an agency as well as privately in the local paper. Normally, if it's advertised through an agency, you shouldn't really go behind the agency and go directly to the owner. But on this occasion, I suggest you just answer the advert here in the newspaper, which the owner has obviously put in.
Okay.
Finally, there is number 14. This is with the New Start agency. This is an agency started by the girl who was my assistant here, and she left to make money for herself, so she's not my favourite person. But I'm afraid I would have to advise you to go through the agency anyway. Again, their number is in the phone book. All right, is that something for you to be starting with?
That's great. But what kind of place is Newbridge?
It's a nice place. It was developed about 100 years ago, really for people who worked in the factories around there. They were clothing factories and everyone worked in them, men, women, boys and girls. Then, when the factories closed down, things got very difficult for the town. There was a huge amount of unemployment until a few years ago when, in the telecoms boom, a company making mobile phones started up. I think your phone was made in Newbridge. And now this company employs most of the people in the town. There are new housing estates on the edge of the town, but they're mostly occupied by young families, and there isn't much student accommodation there. Most flats and so on are in the centre.
That sounds good.
Well, let me know how you get on.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You are going to hear an introduction to the facilities and regulations of the main university library. You will hear 3 different speakers describe different aspects of the library. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 20.
Hello, my name's John Giles. It's good to see you all here for this part of your orientation to the university. Libraries can be complicated and frightening places for new students, and my job's to make you feel welcome, show you how you can find your way around, and introduce you to people who can give you further information and advice about using the library. I'll give you a general introduction to the printed materials, then Susie, who you will meet in a few minutes, will talk about our multimedia services. And finally, Jonathan Freeland, our head librarian, will outline the rules and regulations you must observe as library users. First, though, on behalf of my colleagues and myself, I want you to know that we are all at your service. Unlike many libraries, we insist that all our librarians have an additional qualification in at least one of the subjects taught in the university. You will find librarians who are specialists in science, social sciences and humanities. Most of our staff are also currently doing research and thus up to date with the periodical and internet literature as well as the books. The second advantage we enjoy here is that all our books and periodicals are available from this building. Some of them have to be ordered from our underground stores, known as the stacks. But you don't have to visit more than one building to find the materials you need. This is because we are purpose-built. Now, how do you find your way around? As you no doubt saw in the entrance hall, there is a plan of the library showing you where the books and periodicals can be found for any particular subject. We keep the books and periodicals for each subject on the same floor, so for instance, environmental sciences are colour-coded green and are housed on the ground floor towards the front. Geography is colour-coded brown and can be found on the ground floor towards the back of the building. Each room is organised on the same plan. Reference books, which cannot be taken out of the library, are found at the far end of each room, near the librarian's desk, or station as we call it. Next to them on the right are periodicals for the last 2 years. The rest of the shelves contain general books on the subject. These can be borrowed. Lastly, the domestic arrangements. Seating in the library is of 2 kinds: rectangular tables for up to 6 people and individual study booths known as carols. No, not Christmas carols. At every seat there is a PowerPoint for a laptop computer. There is also a panel which lights up to tell you when a book you have ordered is ready for collection from the librarian's desk. After all that hard work, you'll be ready for something to eat. And there are slot machines on every floor where you can buy food and drink. In the basement is a cafeteria where you can order fast food such as pizza, hamburgers, and also fish and chips, salad and fruit. You mustn't bring food and drink into the reading rooms though. Here's Susie Wallace to tell you about the high-tech facilities of the library.
Thanks, John. Don't worry, this isn't going to require a degree in systems engineering to get the hang of. Anyway, with computers and audio systems, the best way to learn is by doing. But here's a few tips to get you started. If there's anything else you want to know, each piece of equipment has a manual explaining how to use it, and either I or Elaine, my very capable assistant, will be on hand to get you sorted out. First off, I'd like you all to follow me over to the Multimedia Centre. You have to come through this room to get to it in any case. Then gather round and I'll talk about each piece of equipment as we get to it. Right, here we are. Now, the Multimedia Centre, or MMC for short, houses all the computer facilities you'll need for your degree studies and your language learning. Many of you are studying electronics or similar subjects. We have terrific facilities for learning CAD, Computer Aided Design, for you non-technies. Some leading companies have donated equipment and state-of-the-art software packages. That's a spin-off from our thriving Industry Links programme. Many of you will be going on for your job experience. But to get back to the point, we have 44 PC terminals and 6 Macs. The Macs are loaded with fantastic software for you, art and design and textile design students. Over here, you can see our 2 widescreen TV monitors. They can receive broadcasts in most Asian and European languages, as well as English. For English language news, we encourage you to use the Student Union TV room, so that those who are learning other languages can use these. Some useful broadcasts come at awkward times, so if you get a note from your academic advisor on a form we'll give you, we can tape up to 2 hours a week for you. In a moment, I leave you to explore on your own, but here's our head librarian to say a brief word about library regulations.
Good morning. I'm sorry to sound like a police officer, but there are a few rules we all need to observe for the benefit of everybody. Courtesy to staff and other library users comes high up the list. Second, the security and safekeeping of materials is essential. All library items are electronically tagged. If the beeper goes off as you leave, you must return to the checkout desk. You are not allowed to bring any bags, packages, or outdoor clothing into the reading rooms. You must leave them in the lockers outside in the corridor. You must take reasonable care of library materials while they are in your possession and return them within 2 weeks of borrowing them. Failure to return them on time without a good reason will result in a fine. When you register to join the library, you will get a copy of the full rules and you must sign this to say that you obey them.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear a conversation between a college tutor and a student about writing a book review. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Oh, hello. Can you spare me a few minutes, please?
Yes, of course, Rachel. What can I do for you?
It's about the book review you've asked us to write as part of the academic writing course. You said we should ask if we didn't know how to set about it.
OK. Well, sit down and let's talk about it. I presume you've chosen the book you want to write about?
Yes.
Good. Then have a look at this outline. If we talk it through and you make notes on it, it'll help you to structure your review. Right, first of all, what's the name of the book?
The Human Mind.
Ah, yes, by Robert Winston. It was tied in with a very good television series, wasn't it? So you should start your review with the title and author. The next question is, what character would you put it in? For example, fiction, history, math.
Well, I suppose it's science.
Can you limit the field a little?
How about popular science?
Yes, I think that's more helpful.
Then I suppose the subject area is the brain.
OK. And it's important to mention the intended readership, because you can't judge how effective a book is without considering who it's meant for.
Well, it doesn't assume you know a lot about the subject, so I say it's for non-specialists. It was promoted in general bookshops.
Right. Now the overview. What would you say Winston is trying to do?
It's very informative, but I think he's also telling us how to make the most of our brains.
Then you should briefly discuss the main topics. I'd recommend mentioning the ones that you found the most significant and interesting.
Well, it starts by looking back at the last few thousand years and looks briefly at some of the theories that have been developed about the brain and about its importance. It wasn't always considered as important as we now believe.
True. And the next topic?
I think it should be the structure and activities of the brain that make it function. I found that chapter very interesting, but it was probably the hardest to understand.
I'd probably agree with you. Any more topics you want to mention?
Oh, it covers so much, like the emotions, memory. But I think the role of the brain in creating personality should be mentioned, because I think that's an important aspect of the book. And then there's advice on how we can use our brains to boost our intelligence. I've already started acting on some of the suggestions.
Good luck. Now let's look at the next section of your review, where you should analyse and evaluate the book. This is the main section where you give your own opinions. This first point is really a question of whether we should take the writer seriously. A musician may be qualified to write about music, but it is not necessary to write about the brain, for instance.
Winston is a professor at the University of London, and he's done a lot of research in various medical fields, so he's very well qualified to write about this subject.
What would you say are the strengths of the book?
It's a complex subject, but he makes it as accessible as it can be for the general reader. That's partly because he illustrates his points with a lot of stories, both about well-known people, like Einstein, and from his own life.
OK. Are there any other strengths you want to add?
I was glad he included a word list to explain the meanings of medical terms, and I didn't find any weaknesses.
Right. Then that brings us to the conclusion. How would you sum up your overall response to the book?
Well, I found it fascinating. I think Winston is quite ambitious in the goal he's set himself, but he's succeeded in reaching it.
Well, there you are. You've got the skeleton of your review. Keep that in front of you while you're reading it up, and it should be fine.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear a lecture on the Clifton Suspension Bridge. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
This is the first of a series of lectures on historic engineering structures. Today we're looking at the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol, which we hope to visit later this term, and I'd like to begin with a brief word about the bridge's history and about bridge building in general. Now, people have been building bridges since prehistoric times. Over the centuries, bridge design has evolved using a variety of engineering techniques, but the objective has always been the same: to get to the other side. One of the most basic types of bridge is the arch, and there's evidence from the Middle East that people knew how to construct arches using stone or brick as early as 3200 BC. The stone arch had the advantage of being quite simple to build, and it remained the main type of bridge design from Roman times until the early 1700s. Another type of bridge with a long history is the suspension bridge, where the road is suspended from cables hanging between towers. The first suspension bridges were simple affairs made of rope and wood, and the earliest recorded examples were constructed around AD 550 in China. But rope has limited strength, and it only became possible to build longer bridges when iron became available. The first major iron suspension bridge in Europe, completed in 1826, was the Menai Strait Bridge in Wales. The story of the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol began just 3 years later, in 1829. At that time, the city authorities wanted to build a bridge over the River Avon. In order to choose the best design, they organised a competition, and the winner, announced in 1831, was an engineer by the name of Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Work began the same year, but was almost immediately interrupted when serious riots broke out in the city. As a result, investors lost confidence, and work stopped until 1836. The 2 supporting piers had been completed by 1843, but unfortunately at this point the money ran out, and work on the bridge came to a halt for a second time. Then, in 1851, all the ironwork for the bridge was sold off in order to pay back the creditors, and the project seemed to have reached an end. However, in 1860, there was a stroke of luck when a suspension bridge in London was demolished. That bridge had chains which were almost the same as the ones designed for Clifton, and these chains were available to buy. Events moved quickly after that. Money was raised, and work went ahead again in 1862. The bridge was finally completed amid great celebration 2 years later, in 1864. We'll be examining some of the design features in more detail in the second half of this talk, but just as a footnote to this section, it's worth looking ahead to the future and a couple of proposals for super bridges linking not only riverbanks or even countries, but continents. One of these is for a bridge between Alaska and Siberia, which would be 6 lanes wide and 80 kilometres long. The water of the Bering Sea beneath is only about 50 metres deep, but the biggest challenge is the extreme cold of the location. This would restrict construction to 5 months a year and also close the road during winter. There's a different obstacle facing a second proposal, a bridge linking Europe and Africa across the Straits of Gibraltar, and that's the depth of water. Although it's only 28 kilometres across, the water is as deep as 1,500 metres in places. In such deep water, a bridge may not be able to support its own weight, so engineers are considering using bridge structures which have never been attempted before. A third seaway that engineers hope to cross in the near future is the Straits of Messina, between the island of Sicily and mainland Italy. Unlike the other two proposals, the Messina Bridge only involves one national government, and the distance is relatively short at 2.5 kilometres, so there's a good chance it will be built. In this case, it's just a matter of who will provide the cash. OK, let's take a break at this point, and then...
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.